It's 5 a.m. on a bitterly cold morning in 1280 CE, and you're a 7-year-old peasant child waking up on a straw mattress you share with 3 of your siblings. Your breath forms clouds in the frigid air of your family's one-room cottage. Your mother hands you a crust of yesterday's bread, your only meal until evening, and sends you out to the well to fetch water, a task you've performed since you could walk. Your younger brother died last winter from a fever. Your older sister was sent away 3 months ago to work as a servant in the Lord's manor. And today might be your last day at home, because your father just agreed to apprentice you to the village blacksmith for the next 7 years. Welcome to medieval childhood. It's not quite what modern childhoods look like. Today we're diving into what daily existence was actually like for children in medieval Europe. And I'm warning you right now, this is going to shatter any romantic notions you might have about growing up in the Middle Ages. We're talking staggering mortality rates, backbreaking labor starting at age 7, arranged marriages for children barely into puberty, and a world where nearly half of all children never lived to see their 10th birthday. Let's start with the most brutal reality, because if you think modern childhood is tough, medieval children would like a word: the shadow of death, surviving childhood. The numbers are staggering. Approximately 25% of medieval children died in their first year of life. Another 12.5% died between ages 1 and 4. 6% more died between 5 and 9. Nearly half of all children never made it to age 10. In a group of 20 medieval children, 9 would be dead before reaching double digits. Diseases like measles, diarrhea, and fevers swept through communities. Malnutrition weakened small bodies. Accidents claimed lives, drowning in wells, falling into fires, being trampled by livestock. Coroner's reports paint vivid pictures. A girl fetching water slips and drowns. A toddler's dress catches fire. A boy near his father's workshop is crushed by timber. These were the grim arithmetic of medieval life. But medieval parents loved their children desperately. The myth that high mortality made parents emotionally distant has been debunked. We have countless records of devastated parents commissioning elaborate burials and never recovering from grief. King Edward I and Eleanor had 16 children. 11 died in childhood. Historical records describe overwhelming sorrow when their sons died. These weren't unique reactions, they were the norm. Medieval people understood childhood as distinct stages. Infancy lasted until age 7, a time of growth. Childhood ran from 7 to 14, designated for play and learning. Adolescence began at 14. These stages shaped laws, customs, and daily life. A day in the life from dawn to dusk. Daily routines depended on social class, but one thing united all medieval children. Childhood was brief, and work began early. For peasant children, the vast majority, life meant labor almost from infancy. At age 3, you might herd geese or gather kindling. At 5, you'd fetch water, mind siblings, or help cook. By 7, you were doing serious work, helping in fields, tending animals, spinning wool, or learning your father's trade. Tiny fingerprints preserved in medieval pottery reveal children worked alongside adults. They weren't watching. They were making things, shaping clay, stirring dyes, hauling materials. Boys followed fathers into fields, workshops, and trades, learning to plow, sow, harvest, tend livestock, and perform endless tasks keeping agriculture functioning. Girls followed mothers, learning equally demanding skills, cooking massive pots over open fires, baking bread, brewing ale, spinning, weaving, sewing, managing small animals, tending gardens and gathering medicinal herbs. This wasn't optional. This was survival. Most families lived perpetually on hunger's edge. Every pair of hands mattered. Noble children lived differently, but no less demandingly. At age 7, noble boys were often sent away to serve as pages in another lord's castle. This fosterage created political alliances, removed children from parental indulgence, and provided proper training. As pages, 7-year-old boys waited at tables, cared for clothing, tended horses, and began learning chivalry. They received education from chaplains in basic reading and writing in Latin. They learned courtly manners and began physical training, hunting, riding, falconry, and practice with wooden swords. At 14, pages became squires. Training intensified. Squires maintained knights' armor and weapons, dressed them for battle, accompanied them to tournaments, and learned combat with real weapons. They studied war, fighting on horseback with lance, sword, and mace while wearing 60 pounds of armor. They practiced jousting against wooden dummies called quintons. If they performed well, squires were dubbed knights around age 21 in elaborate ceremonies costing families fortunes. Noble girls faced different training. They learned reading and writing, though less formally. They studied household management, managing servants, overseeing food production, maintaining accounts, organizing events, understanding herbal medicine, and supervising textile production. They learned courtly arts, needlework, music, dance, and conversation. Their needlework was economically valuable. Tapestries and embroideries produced by noble women were prized throughout Europe. And they prepared for advantageous marriage. Girls could be betrothed at 7, though consummation waited until puberty. Still, marriages were contracted when children barely understood. A girl of 12 could be married to secure alliances, increase wealth, or settle debts. The universal experience, play and games. Despite work and death, medieval children played. They were children, and children play. Archaeological finds paint a cheerful picture. Toy knights cast from pewter, miniature cooking pots and dishes, wooden hobby horses, leather balls, clay marbles, dolls made from cloth, wax, and wool, rattles tied to cradles, spinning tops, whistles shaped like birds. Peasant children made toys from available materials. Sticks became swords. Hollowed bread became boats. Bladders filled with peas became rattles. The games sound familiar: hide and seek, tag, hopscotch, leapfrog, tug of war. Nine Men's Morris. Game boards can still be found carved into benches at Canterbury and Salisbury cathedrals by medieval children. They played early versions of chess, backgammon, blind man's bluff, and countless ball games. Boys often played at war. They fought with wooden swords, practiced archery, and staged mock battles. Noble boys received real weapons shockingly young. Edward I received arrows and a bow at age 5. Henry V got his first sword at 9. Girls played house and mock funerals. One chronicler describes girls dressing dolls in shrouds, carrying them through streets while mourners wailed. Gerald of Wales fondly remembered building sandcastles with his brothers, though Gerald, destined for the church, built sand monasteries instead. The Great Departure, leaving home. For most children, childhood ended abruptly around age 7 to 14 when they left home to work for others. This practice was so common that foreign visitors to England remarked on it with amazement and disapproval. They couldn't understand why English families sent their own children away and took in strangers' children instead. But there was cold logic behind it. Parents believed other masters would discipline and train children more rigorously than indulgent parents could. Sending children away relieved financial pressure on families, and it provided opportunities for children to learn trades and make connections that could improve their prospects. The reality varied wildly. Some children were apprenticed to learn valuable trades: shoemaking, carpentry, metalworking, weaving, baking, brewing. These apprenticeships typically lasted 7 years, beginning around age 12 or 13, though some started as young as 7. The apprentice received no wages but got food, lodging, clothing, and training. Guild rules often forbade masters from taking their own sons as apprentices, precisely to ensure proper discipline and prevent favoritism. Apprenticeship could lead to respected positions as journeymen and eventually master craftsmen with their own shops. But many children, especially girls and the very poor, became servants. They worked in other people's homes, on their farms, in their shops. Some were treated well. Others were exploited, abused, or worked into exhaustion. Court records reveal cases of parents suing masters for mistreatment, and fortunately, courts often sided with the children, removing them and reassigning them to new masters. The poorest children had the bleakest prospects. Some lived in student almshouses or begged door to door. Others worked as day laborers, copying manuscripts, singing in churches, or performing whatever odd jobs they could find to survive. What they ate, wore, and learned food defined existence and status. Peasant children ate simple, monotonous fare. Thick vegetable and grain stew called pottage, cooked over open fires and eaten daily. Bread, when available, usually dark and coarse. Children under 5 drank milk. Older children drank weak ale or wine mixed with water, because water alone was often contaminated and dangerous. Meat was rare, perhaps on holy days or festivals, but hunger was common. Many children went to bed with empty stomachs and woke to meager breakfasts that had to sustain them through long days of labor. Noble children ate spectacularly better: white bread, fish, meat, vegetables, fruits, spices. Their diets included delicacies peasant children never tasted. Clothing mirrored adult styles. Boys wore tunics to their knees with stockings or leggings underneath. Girls wore tunics to their ankles. Most children wore leather shoes, though the poorest went barefoot. Wealthier children wore cloaks in cold weather and various hats. Round caps for boys, bonnets for girls. Later, medieval children from wealthy families wore doublets and hoses like miniature adults. Education existed, but was far from universal. Cathedral and monastic schools taught boys destined for careers in the church. They learned the trivium, grammar, rhetoric, and logic, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Everything was taught in Latin. But the church increasingly recognized that all Christian children needed some education. By the early 14th century, church officials ordered priests to require families to educate their children from age 6 or 7. Parish schools began appearing, roughly 1 per village by the late Middle Ages. More people could read than historians once thought, though literacy rates still lagged far behind modern standards. For most children, education meant learning to do what their parents did. This was their real curriculum: survival, trade skills, and the knowledge needed to function in medieval society. Why this matters? Medieval childhood was harsh beyond modern imagination. Children faced mortality rates that would horrify us. They worked from ages when contemporary children are in elementary school. They were sent away from their families, sometimes never to return. They married young, often without choice. They lived with hunger, cold, disease, and the constant presence of death. Yet they were loved, they played, they learned, they dreamed, they were given toys and taught games. Adults cared about their well-being and established laws to protect them from the worst abuses. Communities stepped in when parents died, with godparents, churches, and local lords providing support for orphans. Medieval childhood differed from ours primarily in mortality and the earlier onset of serious work. But the fundamental experiences, love, play, learning, growth, existed then as now. About 1/3 of the medieval population was under 14 at any given time. These children weren't footnotes. They were the beating heart of medieval society, their labor and learning essential to everything that made that world function. Understanding their lives helps us see our ancestors as fully human. They experienced the complete arc of existence from birth through old age, when they survived childhood's dangers. They knew their grandparents and became grandparents. They built cathedrals, composed music, wrote literature, and created civilizations that still shape our world. Medieval children faced extraordinary hardships, but they were children nonetheless, loved, cherished, and fundamental to the story of human civilization. If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval childhood, hit that like button and subscribe for more analytical approaches to history. What other aspects of medieval daily life would you like to see covered? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching and see you in the next one.